at 5:03 in July.
All right, thank you. Well, welcome all to the Legislative Committee meeting. Let's I'll call the order and I'll call the roll. It's easy enough. I am here. Luke Murphy.
I'm here.
Luke is here. Dave
Here.
and Kate.
I'm here.
Yeah, you know that now. You're in good shape. So the first order of business after taking roll is the approval of the minutes.
I thought they looked excellent.
I did too. Very well typed.
They knocked my socks off. They should be put on sale for the public. Now, public comment. We have a reporter. You want to speak as a public person?
Nah, I'm okay.
Okay. So no public comment, so we move right on to the topics. The first topic on the agenda is residency requirements for boards and commissions. And we have a document attached to this, which is something David put together. Dave, what do you think about this now? What do you want us to?
Well, are we at the point where we're waiting for input from the city attorney?
Yeah, I think I was expecting input from the attorney, and so far we don't have anything written up.
No, I haven't heard anything from.
But I think we do have a couple of specific things that C14 and C17. And then there's C18. Is that language you might propose to go in or be modified to go into the?
Well, this was all, everything that's here is what I recommended.
Yes.
But it was to start the process. If everybody agreed, we would go with it. But did we hear that, what was said about the supermajority? Is the supermajority something that cannot be done?
That's what Dave said. He said that it's, I don't remember the word he used, but we can do it.
Yeah, equal
Okay.
protection
Yes.
problem.
Okay, so that means that under C18, you can just strike by a supermajority vote.
Mhm.
And let's see, was it? And I think that was the only place I put it in.
And that was, that was no distinction. That would be, the common council may appoint a non-resident of the city to an appointed city office or any board or commission. Did you want to distinguish between, in 14, these are people who, these boards can make not recommendations, these boards can make decisions that are binding on the council and the city.
Right. Well, as it is right now, as you saw in my note up top, the city charter currently defines employees and some board and commission members as city officers. So C18 currently allows for a non-resident to be appointed to boards and commissions such as civil service planning, board of public service, and so on and so on. So that's already allowed.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. We discussed that in our last meeting also, and Dave said that they would fall under like the state umbrella of regulations, and so I guess per like a higher law, you can't have non-residents on certain boards and commissions, like they can't be on the planning commission. He said that's a state regulation.
Okay, so that throws Arts Commission in there. So okay, hold on a second. Well, in that case, all that really would need to be added in here is a term like unless otherwise. I don't know how we usually write it, or we have it elsewhere throughout the entire charter, but you just say unless otherwise defined elsewhere in the charter, or unless prevented by state law, is essentially. And that's where Dave Merzig is the one that is better at crafting the verbiage here than I am. But I could probably go through parts of the charter and just copy the statement that's used over and over again.
Well, unless we have it in front of us, I mean, to present it to the council for a vote,
Mhm.
it's probably preferable to wait until we have Dave's take on it. But Luke,
Yeah, one thing that is, I think, well, has changed since last time we met is that we have another commission for the city. So I would just ask for C17 after the end of the assessment interview, instead of doing a period, comma, and community police board, because that was something that we voted on to be a standing commission. Since we're kind of doing this all in one place now, we probably, since we just got on, I get into it.
and we may have other,
I have a feeling what probably happened, John, is since the three of you already met and discussed this, and he was here at that meeting, he probably figured he didn't need to review this anymore. So what I can do is I can make the changes that we want to put in there and then send it back to him and just
yeah,
make sure that it's clear that we haven't missed anything. And then if we're all in agreement, we can then put that on the council agenda for,
we can lay it on, we can,
Yeah.
depending on the time limit, we can
Yeah.
lay it. And go with that.
or I can just forward, what I'll do is whatever I get back from him, I'll forward on to the three of you and let you know what he says.
That sounds good. So we're taking out supermajority, because it's not legal, and we're adding the community police board, but otherwise, the changes or the suggestions that you made are standing.
And that
Yeah.
language in C14, right, the unless previously ruled out by state or federal law thing.
Yeah,
You're gonna find that the phrase
yeah.
Yeah, except I'm gonna put, that'll go in C18.
on C18, okay.
I just gotta figure that, I'll craft that better, because I don't think I need to reinvent the verbiage, I just need to copy what else is used in the charter.
It's probably better for consistency's sake too, Dave, to have it.
I'm not,
What's that, John?
I'm looking at this, the community police board, are you talking about adding that to C14?
C17, where it says.
Okay,
boards and
fine.
commission. Yep. Just so we've got them all, in there.
Now, I keep going back to the idea of residency of the city is required from when boards or commissions that have the authority to make decisions that are binding on the council. For example, reducing the tax rate, the tax on your house. There's a board that can do that if you appeal to your tax level. And so it's the the assessment and review does that, zoning and housing board of appeals does that. Civil Service Commission certainly makes decisions about a number of things, but Planning Commission doesn't. And that's okay, but now the Arts Commission does have the ability to make a decision, at least if there's, it's a little convoluted, because if the strategic plan is accepted, then anything they wish to do, what's the status of that?
Same as it ever was.
Hmm?
Same as it ever was.
What is it?
Oh,
What would you
of the status
describe?
of the plan, of the master plan?
Yeah, if they create a master plan,
Right.
then
Which they are.
anything they recommend to be done, we have no authority about that. Is that correct?
Right, so they're going to present a strategic plan, a comprehensive public art plan to the council based on successful public arts programs in other cities. And it's up to us to approve, or I would recommend denying with feedback that plan. Once it's approved, then they are the body that's responsible for executing that plan. So I guess, I'm not sure what your question is. If it's with regard to oversight of individual pieces of art, then no, we don't have oversight. I guess we could make a case that something was not, in line with the strategic plan that we were given, if we wanted to override their authority in that situation, but, they are the ones who are responsible for the execution of our public art strategy that we approved. Did that answer your question?
So it's saying that they, once the master plan is approved, they have authorities that the council cannot object to.
That's right.
Worse.
Because because we've approved the bigger picture. Yeah, and so they are gonna get into the weeds because they're the experts that we've appointed to do so.
So there's a question there about a non-resident being on that commission.
And what is the question?
We have a non-resident on the Arts Commission.
Right, so what is the question?
Should we have,
Well, we appointed her.
Yeah,
And I think I know what your point is for this one, and I don't want us to get caught in the weeds about discussing like things like master plans that come through them. But if we're talking about their power and authority versus non-residents and residents on that board, maybe the proper question, unless this was answered last week or last month, maybe the proper question is to go to Dave Merzig and say, look, you're saying that all these other boards and commissions, like civil service, planning, board of public service, and so on, according to state law, do not allow non-residents on. Does the state look at the Arts Commission the same way? And if they do, then we have one discussion. If they do not, well, I take it back. If they say, no, you cannot have a non-resident on that board because of the powers that they have, then we need to have a discussion in the council.
let's hold on.
If they say it's fine, what I suspect is the Arts Commission falls into a very big gray area.
Mhm.
And so then, if we want to have a discussion about, let's find out if it falls into that gray area first. Because I don't think you want to, and I don't think I want to like waste our time on discussing something when maybe there's nothing we can do about it, or
That's fine.
we're going down the wrong avenue.
So we're going to, if I'm hearing you create correctly,
I can
let's
add,
wait for Dave Merzig to explain to us.
I can add that into my questions.
I think the other thing to note is that we're talking about a charter change, not changing the powers and duties of the Arts Commission. So I think that's a valid concern, and Dave, I think you have a good solution. But I think that's also separate and distinct from what we're trying to do with this document, which is just state the facts about the boards and commissions that we've established.
But these are all going to be charter changes.
Right, but I guess and this is what I was trying to emphasize last month as well, is that like, we are not here to necessarily deliberate or delineate the powers and duties of any specific board or commission. We are here to get the language right, to update the charter to accurately reflect our current established boards and commissions.
And to discuss the residency.
Residency
Because right now the
requirements.
residency is like, it's all over the place. It's not consistent with what we have.
Yeah, there's
So
also.
I agree with you.
But I think that what we're saying is, where applicable, right? Where applicable, the council can grant a waiver by a vote.
Yeah, that's in there already.
Right, so that's what I mean. Whether or not it's applicable to the Public Arts Commission is a question for Dave Merzig, but it
Right.
doesn't necessarily hold up this document, and that's what I'm trying to.
Well, I don't know.
I think he's gonna tell us that it's not the same as Board of Assessment Review, Public Service, and so on and so on,
I'm sure
because
those
if
are
it
outlined
was,
specifically.
he would have already told us that. But we can ask him again, and I know he's gonna probably can answer my question with a question. But basically say that you can do what you want. But I suspect that there's nothing in the state law that says we can't have non-residents on that board. we need to decide, do we want to do that? But I think we've already made, in a case like that, we've already made that decision as a council, because as we have in C18, with the exception of civil service planning, board of public service, et cetera,
Mhm.
all the other boards and commissions, you have to be a resident unless you're given a waiver by the council. But let me ask him that.
Yeah.
I'll send this to him when I'm done, and we can bring this back
Okay,
I think that's
later.
Mhm.
Okay.
best way to go about it.
so that will be
We'll know where we're going.
the resolution to this. This is going to go to Dave, who's going to some further advice, and then we'll settle on presenting this to let in front of the council.
That sounds good. Yes, it's scouring, but
So the next,
Probably
this one is-
5 minutes when I leave here, actually.
this one is going forward. The next one is the adult use cannabis discussion and smoking policy update.
So that has me listed as a sponsor, but really I just wanted to make sure that was brought to us at a common council meeting. That it was discussed in our, that we took it up. So I don't necessarily have anything to say about it, but just want to make sure that the discussion happens. So I guess that, and Jennifer Hill, who brought it up as representative of tobacco-free communities, is my constituent. So I'm happy to, kind of champion this on her behalf. But basically her concern was that I guess that marijuana will be marketed in a similar way to tobacco, and potentially is children are susceptible to that. But I'm just remembering that, so that could be kind of vague and not entirely correct. I'm just gonna pull it up here in my email so that I can get more familiar with it.
Are we discussing the current smoking policy
I think it's the
in the
smoking.
city,
Yes.
and then just deciding, are we gonna add cannabis to that smoking policy, and then discussing, do we need a further smoking policy on Main Street because of the cannabis issue?
Yes,
That was my impression.
that sounds great. Yep.
Okay.
So the motion,
Thank you.
I think you were saying something, Luke, or suggesting something?
Sorry if I interrupted.
No, it's okay. No, I was just gonna say, I think, I know there's a lot of things in motion with the legalization of cannabis, but, treating it as we would alcohol or tobacco, and again, we treat each one differently, but,
My
And there are-
argument with Katie is that I think you're correct, or Jennifer's correct, or both are correct, in that our no smoking policy in the parks seems to be tobacco specific.
Mhm.
So I think it would be a very simple change. Adding a couple of words and just have David draft that, and I think everybody would be in agreement to make those changes.
Yeah, and Greg, you sent us a copy of our policy, right? Do you have that handy? If not, that's fine, because I'm just pinning the thing from Jennifer so that I can find that.
That was the city internal policy regarding city property
Right,
outside of the parks of the.
The parks one mentions the word tobacco. So
Yeah,
it's worth making a change just to make sure there's no, like claim that doesn't.
oh, I have it here, right?
Yeah,
so this, not to go down the rabbit hole, but since we're talking about, smoking, is under the law, is vaping considered smoking?
our policy, current policy of the
Mhm.
parks says no smoking or vaping.
Okay.
So this is dated January 10th, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just the policy for city property for city employees, right? Yes, the next sheet.
now, does that cover what sidewalks was mentioned?
This isn't
Yeah.
just
Well,
for anybody,
I don't think it's just.
Okay,
because it's talking about city.
well, it's not employees, because it's city property.
right,
It's not the parks policy. It's not the parks policy.
Right, because the parks policy is in the code, and I don't think that this is in the code.
Parks policy is either in the code or it's an ordinance, I believe it's an ordinance.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so let me pull that up now,
My,
because I remember asking you about it.
I think it's an ordinance, and I did look at it, and I think it's very tobacco specific.
Yeah, 194-4.
It certainly wouldn't hurt to change it to make it perfectly clear.
Yeah, totally. So it says, no person shall smoke or use any tobacco product or other nicotine delivery system within any public park in the city of Oneonta, including Wilbur Park, Neowon, Patello, Susquehanna River, Sport Wilcox, Susquehanna Greenway, New Island. Oh, it doesn't say, oh yeah, it does. Associated fields, courts, pools, playgrounds, facilities, trails, wooded areas, lawn areas, and parking lots. Oh yeah, so here in section B, this might be it. For purposes of this section, to smoke or utilize any tobacco product shall need to burn a lighted cigar, cigarette, or pipe, and or use any other substance which contains tobacco and also includes e-cigarettes, vapor devices, and chewing tobacco. Oh, it's illegal to chew. That's nice. Appropriate signage, smoke-free zones, however, the presence or absence of sign should not be a defense to a violation. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Mayor, just adding, cannabis is pretty straightforward. If the council wants to do that, I mean, I would support that.
what I have seen is the advice that if you have an anti-tobacco, no smoking or now we even have a use of tobacco. This it gets a little, it's on, but it gets a little interesting because chewing tobacco, which I assume is about spitting. So a person could be chewing tobacco as long as they don't spit if they swallow.
Yeah.
It says,
You just read that,
Yeah.
chewing is not allowed.
Yeah.
Chewing is not allowed. Now, it's not allowed because it's consuming a tobacco product. Snuff is not mentioned either.
I'm
Snuff,
sorry, what is snuff? Is it chewing tobacco?
it is tobacco that you can,
You pack it,
Hmm?
right? It's like little packets.
you can pack it into your mouth.
I thought that's what chewing tobacco was.
No,
Different?
no,
I'm
chewing.
sorry, I'm
no,
totally
no,
green.
Snuff is also inhaled.
Okay, so we should add that, right, if we want to be comprehensive.
It does, I mean, it lists some specific things, it says in the purpose of the section to smoke and or utilize any tobacco products.
Utilizing would be it, okay.
It kind of covers everything tobacco or nicotine delivery system, and
Yeah.
it just goes on the list specifically.
It does say not including nicotine patches or gum.
Not
That's
including
nice.
what?
Nicotine patches or gum,
So just every place that says tobacco and
Yeah.
cannabis.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that her concern, based on this ordinance, is that it didn't include city property, but to Greg's point, there is a policy around that, so we may want to consider adding that language from the policy to this ordinance as well.
The policy,
So the policy Greg sent to us, it says, in response to complaints from members of the general public and city staff, and in the interest of good health, yada, 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 banning the use of tobacco products and vaping devices in city-owned parks and plazas. Smoking and the use of any and all tobacco products and vaping devices will now be prohibited within city buildings, facilities, properties, vehicles, and equipment that are either owned or leased by the city, except areas that are designated for such purposes. So basically, George expanded the ordinance to a policy, but it doesn't look like it's ever been made into law. So theoretically, we can do that as well.
Intent, I mean, it covers all people, but the real focus and intent of it was for employees.
Employees, right, which
I mean,
makes
that was-
sense.
that was-
Yeah, totally, especially the part about like in vehicles and stuff.
I
You
mean,
know, because
we're
if you're off
really-
city property, but you're in a
We're
city
really not
vehicle,
gonna monitor
that's-
that somebody's walking down Main Street smoking a cigarette and they have to put it out when they cross City Hall.
That wouldn't be city property. I mean, that's in the parking lot.
We could
The
add,
intent was for employees not to be, I mean, what was happening was employees would go right outside the door,
Yeah, right,
take a smoke break, and then would drift through windows.
totally, yeah. So is there, I guess my question is, per Jennifer's suggestion, is there interest on this committee to add this policy and make it part of make city property on a broader scale, part of the smoking prohibition for everyone?
I think we should, considering we're pairing cannabis with tobacco products for non-smoking in the parks. And the differences between tobacco and cannabis, I would agree that we should have a no smoking policy written in here. We could just add to smoking prohibited, including city properties and buildings. Because we already have a policy here about not smoking in the buildings, but do you want people walking in the city hall with a cigarette still in their mouth? Or do we want, worse, having somebody having marijuana that they lit up outside and they figure I'm just gonna run in for a couple minutes?
Yeah, or just sit on the steps.
Yeah. It just seems more consistent to me to include this.
I mean, I'm super like anti-tobacco, and I think that anybody who smokes should quit because you deserve to live a long time. And so for me, like, I'm sort of willing to go like as far as we can legally to restrict tobacco use, because I think it's in everyone's best interest. So that's where I stand on that, and that's unequivocal, so.
I think if we look at it as there's secondhand smoke is involved with both of them. And if somebody's sitting on the steps of City Hall, finishing a cigarette, and City Hall, it's a public building, lots of people come and go. Should they have to walk through that when there's plenty of people that have asthma, which seems to be increasing every year, for them to walk through that as they're going inside? It just doesn't seem right. But does that also mean that we can't have employees standing outside the side doors and having a cigarette during their cigarette break or their break?
Only if it's a designated area.
Okay. All right.
So that's nice.
Because I wouldn't want
Designate
to
specific
restrict
areas.
somebody that works here that still smokes from having that opportunity during a break to have their cigarette.
And this is a silly question because I'm sure that we do, but we have designated smoking areas and they're sufficient and distant from the building and clearly marked.
I'm not sure that we have any designated areas.
No, I'm not sure.
I think
We ever did that, we left it after
the
that.
intent wasn't, it's an option,
Okay.
but I think City Hall, there is no place to designate that is far enough away that it's not going to interfere with people coming in and out of the building or windows that are open. So what happens is people walk across the street.
Gotcha.
You know, there may be in some of the other buildings, there may be an appropriate location, but I think for the most part, people walk off the property. But we have the option of designating the location if one is appropriate.
Okay.
Okay, I think. So we're really talking about igniting and either creating smoke or creating vapor. And then chewing tobacco, or even perhaps using snuff. This is not permitted on city, or in city property.
And I don't know the answer to this, so I'm asking, would it be simplest to say all tobacco and cannabis products excluding gum and patches? Would that just be easiest to do as opposed to going through what we do allow?
Patches, okay.
Although
Yeah.
it does say, if it's, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the sign thing, that it says that if there isn't a sign, that's not a defense. So I was thinking that it was, if it's not listed here, that's not a defense, but I agree, that's way more inclusive and it's much simpler.
So that will need to be drafted, and I think it's a simple matter, I think, of adding marijuana to it.
I am happy to do that. I didn't bring my lap. Can you just read me the subsection, Katie, so I can
Oh,
go through and
yeah.
edit it?
Yeah.
Not edit it, but propose
Yes,
it, propose and edit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's 194-4.1. If you go to Ecode 360 and type in smoking, it's like the first response.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the policy that Greg forwarded to us, I will forward to you if you want to include any language about city property. Okay,
No,
I know that you have it, but just to get it
No, I appreciate
like
it.
farther up in your inbox.
Yes. The fewer clicks, the easier. Thank you,
Yeah,
Katie.
exactly.
Appreciate it.
John, the other question I want to bring up here, and this is probably a can of worms, but if we're looking at having possibly a cannabis shop eventually on Main Street, which I'm okay with it, but I'm not okay with having lots of people walking up and down Main Street smoking marijuana, because I think that's gonna be a big turnoff to a lot of parents, a lot of non-parents. I wouldn't necessarily want to be smelling that when I'm going on Main Street all the time. So do we want to, I know we discussed in the past about having a no smoking policy on Main Street. Do we want to revisit that? Looking at what potentially could be coming, or do we want
So that would include no smoking on the sidewalks, no smoking cigarettes.
I
Okay,
like that idea.
to? Well, I see one being potentially blowing up in our faces, the smoking cigarettes or smoking tobacco products. But then I see a lot of people being on board with saying, you know what? You shouldn't be smoking marijuana on Main Street. You don't buy whatever you want, take it home, smoke it somewhere else. But I could be wrong on that.
No,
My question is it gonna be, I mean, initially, yes, there's probably gonna be a lot of people, but is it gonna be an issue a couple weeks down the line?
I don't know.
It's already out. I mean, it doesn't, there's nothing to do with having a store.
Right.
It's legal right now to smoke marijuana.
Yeah, but once you have a store there, Gary, I think you're gonna have a lot more concentration of people going and getting it, and then maybe wanting to light up right after they buy it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, just from my experience, I support what you're saying, and I will definitely support banning smoking on Main Street, just because, again, when we went through the mask policy, right, that was because there's a higher concentration of people on Main Street. I think just for public health, you know, not having people inhale secondhand smoke is a great idea. But I don't know that people are like walking out, rolling up joints. That hasn't been my experience.
I
That's all.
would, the no smoking on Main Street's been discussed over the years. You know, I would consult with the business community, you know, before moving forward on that. Because, you know, certainly the bars and restaurants may have some real concerns because people are in a bar and a restaurant, they can't smoke, but they step outside
Right.
to smoke.
Can we designate hours of the day?
You can do anything, but I know that, you know, some businesses may love the idea, some businesses may think it's going to scare away.
But it may not be an issue either.
Yeah, so I don't know, but I would certainly at least consult with them first, I don't know the response.
Suggestion.
I mean, I'm perfectly fine with just waiting on it and seeing what happens too. It may very well not be an issue at all. So,
That's what I said with the.
So
I
I'm not
think,
sure,
yeah, I like that.
could we clarify what the prohibition would be about smoking?
Well, I think in terms of the code, the thing that was brought up by Katie, I'm going to draft up based on our discussion. I've got some notes here. Something including cannabis products into what we have currently, as well as streamlining a little bit of tobacco products from the code, and I will have that to you folks in draft form. I don't think it's a big change. I could probably get it tonight when I get home and work on it, and I can send that out to the committee.
Okay,
Wait,
go ahead, please.
are we talking all cannabis, or are we talking about cannabis in food products also? So what if people go and buy brownies that have cannabis in them? Does this mean they can't sit in the park and eat them? We not thought about that.
Well, the original piece was smoking. Well, I think part of it is not to prevent people from smoking, not to have a prohibition, but to keep children and just people who are in the park from getting intruded on by smoke, or perhaps it's even vapor.
Well, my point was, if we're not talking about, we have to decide, are we talking about food and smoking? And if we're not talking about food, we don't want to include that, then we need to probably say that in.
Yeah, I will, if not you guys, I'm sorry, if everyone's all right with it, I'll play with the language, send it out, and thank you for including that, because that completely went over my head. If that works for everybody here, I can work with the language, think about it.
So we're
think
saying
the
we're
other
not,
thing
we're
is-
not worried about the food part, right?
I'm not worried.
I'm not worried about it.
I think, and also what an enforcement nightmare, like this
Yeah.
lollipop is a lollipop, you know? No, there's weed in there, like, that's not gonna happen, so.
I'll fill in with the language, if everybody's okay
Yeah,
with that.
I think
I'll
to
send
John's
something out.
point, it's about like the intrusion.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, and I think Gary made a good point there, and you can go around at night to bars, and people are sent outside to smoke.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that
That's
happens
true.
on Main Street, that happens in a variety of places, where you can't smoke indoors because that confines the smoke, and then it affects employees who have to work in the same facility. But people have been sent out to the great outdoors or to the street. And you can see people smoking outside the bars, and what to do about that. And even around the corner.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think the mayor's plan was a good idea, was just to talk to business owners and say, you know, how do you feel like this would impact your business if we were to limit smoking in the commercial district?
Somebody like it.
Well,
And then-
do we want, well, they may like it, this is fine. I'm using prohibition as a model. You're not allowed to sell. You're a dry place, could have been that marijuana. But when you're not dry, we have open container laws that say, if there's beer in that red mug of yours, toss it on the grass and then throw the red mug after it. But I don't know what we're trying to do. I like the idea smoking migrates from one person to another if they're nearby. The park is the park, we might want to keep that clear. But once you start talking about if you're walking on the sidewalk in the city with a lit cigarette, you're going to be stopped. You might be in violation of the law.
Well, didn't this conversation start because of concern about secondhand smoke?
Mhm.
I mean, I think we maybe.
Yeah.
You know, mission creep here is taking place.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
I'll write something, probably everybody will think it's perfect.
Definitely.
All right, let's
Should we
go, let's
move on
just
to
start with that.
Sure.
Now, we are going to see an example and consider moving that to the council. Well, that's where we stand.
Yep.
Now we have the last topic, 1% for art.
Sure, so, this is something that was suggested to me, as a way to fundraise for art. This is something that we can absolutely take our time on, because the idea of it is that you would fund public art through a percentage allocated from capital projects, and since we have no capital projects scheduled for 2022, it's pretty moot. But I think that it's something that we could look at as a long-term source of funding for a public arts venture. I did share with the group in sort of a weird way. It wasn't with the materials, but I have it here. a model statute.
Was that from?
So you sent that to me.
You know where that was from? I'm sorry, what?
I know that you sent that.
I did, yeah, and so I'm just gonna make sure, I'm pretty sure everybody on the city committee, yeah, will have council on it. So the 1% for our bylaw, like I said, this is Amherst.
I was thinking something.
Basically, any, construction projects that the city would do, 1% of the total cost of that project would be allocated for public arts. That adds up. So that's my whole story about it. It's something that's done in other places. It's something we could consider. Again, we have a model statute to look at if everybody's interested in that, and I'll just let it go there.
Greg, in a really ambitious year, what would you think, and I know this is kind of a tricky question, but just trying to get ballpark numbers. For an ambitious year, realistically, what do you think, aside,
It's under.
a budget that we would typically see for capital projects would be?
I mean, ambitious year. You know, if you look at projects, for example, you look at a project like the wastewater treatment plant up there, which is not something you do every year, it's something you do, you know, once in a couple of decades. That's $8 million projects. You'll have, we're applying for a grant, which on the finance committee is identified for $5.6 million project with the water treatment plants. We've got the transit hub project that's coming up. It could be, you know, parking garage, transit hub Market Street, which could be upwards of $15 million or somewhere down lower than that. Street projects, that sort of thing, we're typically spending around $1 million.
Okay.
And quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough to say, look at our capital plan, see what our average
Right.
allocation is, I have to look at that, but a few $1 million.
So out of the water treatment plant upgrade, you would get $60,000 to the arts.
That's what I was trying to figure, that's what I was thinking.
And out of the transit hub, you get $150,000. So that money has to come out of our budget.
It has to come from the general fund, it wouldn't be something that a grant would cover, you know, so in the case of the transit hub or, you know, DOT transit money wouldn't be able to use for that. It has to be something that we're basically creating our own match, you know, there might be normally a 10, 20, 50% match on a project, we just be adding another percentage to that.
Maybe something that's doable, maybe just not at 1%.
What's the advantage of doing that over just saying, we're going to budget a certain amount to the arts every year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have the answer to that. I think that this is just a strategy that we can consider. Especially, you know, at this point, I think, and, you know, unfortunately, they're not looking for a whole lot of money, you know, so thinking about a $60,000 drop in the Public Arts Commission is like several years worth of what they would be looking for. But then again, you know, if we're bonding anything, you know, then that's gonna be out over several years as well, so.
You could have paid for the bond money. The bond money has to be specific for the long-term project, just 1%.
Right,
That's ineligible, and you could add that to the bond.
right, I guess. Let me just read it, because I don't know that it's anything that's added. I think that it's, well, I guess it would have to
Well,
be,
Jenny
isn't
would
it?
be the expert. I'd ask you.
Yeah, okay. I will. Yeah, I guess I'm sorry, I don't know enough about it.
Because you can't just bond, you know, can't be just borrowed money.
Well, right, but I was thinking if you're bonding for a capital project and this becomes part of the capital project.
It would be, yes, if you're building
That
a
would be
new
the way.
transit hub and you're going to have install art in that transit hub, then yes, you probably, that would be a good case where it makes sense.
Gotcha, okay. So does anyone want to talk about this or have anything, any other thoughts? I agree, like.
And with loves, go to at the water place.
Stan's already got some stuff.
I know.
There,
I know.
hey,
I saw it.
Val,
Yeah,
Really?
Take a
yeah.
look at the front door.
That's so
I
cool.
saw that.
I like the idea, Katie, and I think depending on the year, for example, for like what Greg said, if we had a year where we had $10 million in capital projects, it's a lot of money, but I like the idea of making sure that we have funding for the arts. Whether that's 1%, whether that's kind of a fluid number, or we decide at budget time what we're gonna do. I like the spirit of it. I'm not exactly sure if that 1% number is,
Sure.
but I like I think the idea of funding the arts support.
Yeah, it's funny how little like 1% sounds, but then.
You do it like
you
on $10
apply
million.
it to millions
Yeah.
of dollars.
Yeah.
So this remains for consideration or further discussion.
Yeah, that would be great.
But I like the idea for doing a project that has a space where you could incorporate art. And you could have a policy, where any project that is appropriate for incorporating public art should have 1% allocated towards that purpose.
Is the Arts Commission is gonna be coming forward with their plan for funding.
Yeah, so we
Correct.
meet Wednesday. And I think it's really ambitious, but they would like to have their plan, like signed, sealed, and delivered by our next council meeting. Because they're really eager to get started. And that should include funding, so.
I think we should let them.
You lost
lead
Larry?
the way. And
It's just a
it
dream.
seems more, I guess more, I don't know if organized is the word I'm looking for, but we put them together for a reason. Let's let them do their thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, I love the idea of being able to fund them. I just don't know what level is gonna be appropriate. It could be that, right now, it may be very little is needed. Where down the road or periods of time, there may be a lot that's needed. I don't know. But let's see what they come up with. And I like Gary's idea where we set aside a certain amount of the year, but we also have to make a commitment to that.
Right. And I think that's where the spirit of this is to say, as much as we invest in our community in this one way, we're gonna make sure that we're also investing in art. But it doesn't have to be this.
Well, this is also Amherst, Mass, I'm assuming.
No, I think it's Amherst, New York.
Amherst, New York, really?
I don't know.
They've got a lot more going on than as far as project. Like to see how this balances. But I do like this idea that
Yeah,
I
that
think
sounds
Barry makes a point just to amplify this. We're going to be discussing budget in the next. And this is a budget issue. It's either 100% turns into 99%. Or it is something where we say, we now want to, on an annual basis, budget money towards art. We're not locked into whatever that might be. I don't know whether that's statuary, a monumental art. I'm not sure what this is. So haven't heard much, and I'd like to hear from the Arts Committee as to what they believe, some goals that they have would be materialized by what. And I'd like to hear the specifics about that. And if it's to enlarge the Statue of Liberty that's down in the park to be comparable to the New York Statue of Liberty, we might pass on that. But a lot of the things that are up, that already, they're up. There are statues around and that sort of thing. Do we want, what are they proposing we do? And then what kind of budget impact might we consider every year?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So,
I guess yes.
may I ask, I know it's not in the agenda, it was brought to my attention on Saturday, I didn't have enough time to get it out. May I ask a quick question of Greg that might have something to do with codes in legislative? I got an email from a constituent who lives.
Sorry.
Oops.
I'm sorry. Sorry, man.
This is kind of a codes legislative question, but I think it's more in your ballpark. Question, I got an email about, some erosion going on down by Valley. And I took a road, on the back to it on Hudson. And wasn't sure what I'd find. Apparently the area, I'm not sure what it's called, between the sidewalk and the road, that little patch. Yeah, the median is really starting to.
Yeah, well, I think Parents Park.
Yes.
There, there's not the curb, so there's long grass. and,
Okay.
Weeds, some drainage improvements.
Okay.
Trying to install a curb would be a solution.
Okay.
But there needs to be some drainage work.
Got it. Okay.
It's on our radar.
Just curious, I wasn't sure where to bring it up, and I saw it in a couple minutes, I thought I'd be here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there any more legislative business for discussion? No need for executive session. So I think we can adjourn.
Thanks, John.